Hello, welcome to Truth Not Tradition Online Bible Study for March 25th, 2015. I'm Tony Smario, here with my father, Brother Sal. Good morning, Dad.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. We had the Jewish New Year start, the month of Nisan.
That was the Holy New Year, not the regular New Year.
Thank you. The Holy New Year, the one that we're paying attention to with regard to the feast days. The new moon starts the year, and 14 days later, the Passover. And it just so happened that this new year started with a solar eclipse. And so there's a lot of buzz in the astrological world, the world of the people watching the stars for the signs of the times, which is clearly delineated all throughout Scripture, that they're there for a sign and for a witness. And so the people who are watching that are paying close attention, and we've had some comments this week from some of our friends and others. And one of them pointed us to the book of Amos, 8th chapter. In the 9th verse it says, "In that day, declares the sovereign Lord, I will make the sun go down at noon." This occurred at noon in Israel. Right at noon, this solar eclipse to start their new religious new year. "I will make the sun go down at noon and darken the earth in the broad daylight. I will turn your religious feasts into mourning and all your singing into weeping." Remember, this is the start of the new year, coming into the religious feasts. All right. I will make all of you wear sackcloth and shave your heads. Geez, that brings up signs of Jonah. That's what they did in Nineveh. From the king on down, they shaved their heads and put on sackcloth and begged the Lord not to destroy them. "I will make that time like mourning for an only son, and the end of it like a bitter day." This continues now, 11th verse. "The days are coming, declares the sovereign Lord, when I will send a famine through the land. Not a famine of food or a thirst for water, but a famine of hearing the words of the Lord. Men will stagger from sea to sea and wander from north to east, searching for the word of the Lord, but they will not find it." So anyway, I thought this was interesting. I wanted to go back, because we started in the middle of this thought, which is a vision that Amos is having of a basket of ripe fruit. What is called the 8th chapter of Amos starts, "This is what the sovereign Lord showed me, a basket of ripe fruit." "What do you see, Amos?" he asked. "A basket of ripe fruit," I answered. "Then the Lord said to me, the time is ripe for my people Israel. I will spare them no longer. In that day, declares the sovereign Lord, the songs in the temple will turn to wailing. Many, many bodies flung everywhere. Silence." Pretty heavy scene he's seeing suddenly. Songs in the temple turn to wailing. Now, that sounds a lot like Daniel to me. The abomination that causes desolation. He comes in, kicks over their idol, declares they have to worship him, and from the rest of the story we know he slaughters wholesale because they wind up only a remnant fleeing Jerusalem to be saved in a place prepared for them. This is what I'm getting out of it, that this is the vision that Amos is having of that in that day. Songs in the temple are going to turn to wailing, many, many bodies flung everywhere, silence. "Hear this, you who trample the needy and do away with the poor of the land." Amazing how, he's just declared this sort of heavy, the time's ripe, I'll spare them no longer. And he starts out with, "Hear this, you who trample the needy and do away with the poor of the land." This is who's on the top of the list. Saying, this is what these people who trample the needy and do away with the poor of the land. Saying, When will the new moon be over, that we may sell again? Sell grain. And the Sabbath be ended, that we may market wheat. Right? When are these religious, sort of commitments going to be done? When do I get out of church that I can go back to forgetting about all that and back to what I really want to do? When will the new moon be over, that we may sell grain? When will the Sabbath be ended, that we may market wheat? That's what they're saying, these people that trample the needy. And so I hope the modern world is getting that. It's not just that they're physically out hitting poor people with sticks. It's that their attitude is on buying and selling, making more money. Whereas the festivals and the Sabbaths are to remind them what God is about, what the commitment's about, which is taking care of the needy and the poor. And if they did that, they'd be rich in the Lord and they wouldn't have to worry about buying and selling their wheat. But anyway, the thought is really quite deep here, so I want to read it through one time. So in that day, the time is ripe for my people Israel. I'll spare them no longer. In that day, declares the sovereign Lord, the songs in the temple will turn to wailing. Many, many bodies flung everywhere. Silence. Hear this, you who trample the needy and do away with the poor of the land, saying, when will the new moon be over, that we may sell grain, and the Sabbath be ended, that we may market wheat, skimping the measure, boosting the price, and cheating with dishonest scales, buying the poor with silver and the needy for a pair of sandals, selling even the sweepings with the wheat. So, I just find it so interesting in a Christian world so concerned with the moral right, the moral majority, all this morality. I'm wondering, how do we discern this? What is the morality that we're looking at? I just don't know. We're not running around the streets naked, so we're okay. Is that the morality we think? We don't show our nakedness. We're not sleeping with farm animals. We're really quite pure. But how come it's whenever he mentions these things that are really the worst things, it's always got to do with our fixation on money and our abandonment of our responsibility to the poor and the needy. So, and then it goes on in verse 7, the Lord has sworn by the pride of Jacob, I will never forget anything they have done. This is just after, he doesn't go through a tirade like Paul does in Romans about all the lying and the thieving and the sexual immorality and the stealing from brother to brother and he's really just straight to it, you who trample the needy and do away with the poor, saying, when can we get back to the buying and selling, which is what's really on our mind, and doing that, skimping the measure, boosting the price, cheating with dishonest scales, buying the poor with silver and the needy for a pair of sandals, right? In other words, just taking advantage is what we're all really about. And so the Lord sworn by the pride of Jacob, I will never forget anything they have done. Will not the land tremble for this, and all who live in it mourn? The whole land will rise like the Nile. It will be stirred up and then sink, like the river of Egypt. In that day, declares the sovereign Lord, I will make the sun go down at noon and darken the earth in broad daylight. I will turn your righteous feasts into mourning and all your singing into weeping. So this is it's the sign of the sun going down and the religious feast, and the connection between that happening now at the beginning of the religious new year is very interesting, because it's got to do with this day when everybody's so caught up in the buying and the selling. It sounds very much like the Laodicean age of the church on that other end that we study. Mm-hmm. Same idea. These guys, all they care about is what new moon festival? Come on, we got wheat to sell.
Well, see, to me, this sets the timing of when all of this is beginning now, because this is the day when the sun set at noon, and we are in the time, like you say, of the Laodicean church, but we're not talking about us here. We're talking about the Jews here.
Well, I don't know. We're like we've been speculating if we're talking about the whole house of Israel.
Well, that's true.
And not only that, nothing changes. Amos is talking to the people before they go into Babylon. Nothing's changed. This is what I keep seeing, whether it's the Laodicean age of the church or the Israelites in Amos's time or the Jews in Jesus's time. It's the same story. You just won't do it God's way, which is to be humble. Stop craving riches and power over each other. Stop selling one another and stepping on each other's head to get ahead of each other. That's not my way. That's not love. That's not what's been prescribed to you to separate you out from the world. And so this is what I'm trying to get at as a Christian message, not just to rehash what's going on with the Jews, but that this very thing that's bringing on the end of times. The only reason we know it's the end of time in that day, because he could be talking about in the day that they're going to go into Babylon, in the day that they're going to go into some other captivity. But it always, these prophecies, these guys, this is what I find so uncanny. They always end with this vision of reconciliation. They always see the Lord forgiving them in one way or another. And so even though I meant to tie all this into Amos's vision, funny enough, when I woke up this morning, my little bookmark was conspicuously stuck in the book of Micah as I was going for the book of Amos. And I thought, well, okay, I guess I should read the book of Micah. And so I just read the book of Micah this morning, and you know, I mean, I've read all these books before, but I don't remember what they say until I go back to them. But the more I read them every time, the more I see they say the same darn thing. In that they refer to what's going on at the time. It's very much like the pattern of Revelation. Tell the 7 churches that are in Asia this. But then that actually means something that also goes into the future. It certainly must mean that to the churches of Asia at the time. Otherwise, I mean, was Jesus lying to the 7, write this down, send it to the 7 churches? I'm sure it was a very accurate description then, as it's probably an accurate description now of all the characteristics of the representation of church, of that religious experience in the Christian church, as well as perhaps a historical prophetic analogy or discourse. But what I find so interesting in all the Old Testament scriptures is the way these guys they're dealing with the problem now. They're saying, you guys are doing this and doing that, and the Lord's going to cut you off, and he's going to kill you, and you're going to go into bondage, and here, and you have to change your ways. And yet they find themselves talking about in that day. And in that day always can be tied to usually the millennial kingdom, as we're going to see in Micah, because it's tied to a day when there's no more war and when the Lord's leading them forever. Okay, well, the Lord's not leading them forever, so we're not in that day. And yet this has become my own little key to checking out these Old Testament things now, is the way the prophet's vision is going between the moment, even if he doesn't know it, or she, the moment that they're speaking of, in the moment that they're speaking to those that they're speaking to, and into the future in that day. And that they go back and forth almost invisibly, so that from one line to the next, it's only separated by in that day, and you find out when in that day is by what follows and what the happens afterward. But when you go right before that, you see that he's talking to the people who are living at the time that he's living. So anyway, I want to sort of demonstrate that because I realized it in Micah today, who the Ryrie commentary says lived about 700 BC, and Micah himself claims he lived during the reigns of these kings of Judah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. And he's telling them about the exile they're going to go into. There, it starts out with, "Hear, O peoples, all of you. Listen, O earth, and all who are in it, that the sovereign Lord may witness against you, the Lord from his holy temple." So he's immediately talking to the people that live, but then he says, look, the Lord is coming from his dwelling place. He comes down and treads the high places of the earth, which could be metaphorical. It's his rule. The mountains melt beneath him, and the valleys split apart like wax before the fire, like water rushing down a slope. Okay, now that sounds more like a vision of, that encounter when he comes and he's here. So to me, it's like all of a sudden, again, he's moved right into this vision from the moment he lives all the way to seeing God come and what his power does. It splits valleys, melts mountains, and that's going to happen. Look, the Lord's coming from his dwelling place. He doesn't mean today, just like when Paul said, he's coming quickly, get ready. They were expecting him in the first century, and here we are 20 centuries later, which to God, a day is 1,000 years. It's only been a couple of days. Hang in there. So in these views, it's not so long in the perspective of a dimensional idea of time being 1,000 years to our day, or his day being 1,000 of our years. You can maybe see how the prophets can see things from, here's Micah saying, "Hear, all you peoples of the earth, listen to you that dwell in it," because I'm talking to everybody from here. And this is 700 years before Christ, so this is now 2,700 years ago. And he immediately breaks into, look, the Lord's coming from his high place, and the mountains melt like... So what's he seeing? Something at that moment? I don't think so. It seems like he's seeing the end. And then he goes on, "All this because of Jacob's transgression, because of the sins of the house of Israel." What is Jacob's transgression? Is it not Samaria, which was the capital of the northern tribes, Israel? What is Judah's high place? Is it not Jerusalem? "Therefore I will make Samaria a heap of rubble, a place for planting vineyards. I will pour her stones into the valley and lay bare her foundations. All her idols will be broken to pieces. All her temple gifts will be burned with fire. I will destroy all her images, since she gathered her gifts from the wages of prostitutes. As the wages of prostitutes, they will again be used. Because of this, I will weep and wail. I will go about barefoot and naked. I will howl like a jackal and moan like an owl, for her wound is incurable. It has come to Judah. It has reached the very gate of my people." Who's this weeping and wailing going about like a jackal? It sounds like it's God. I will pour her stones into the valley. I will destroy all her images, since she gathered them from the wages of prophets. Because of this, I will weep and wail. I will go about barefoot and naked. I will howl like a jackal and moan like an owl. I hope Christians can imagine this doesn't mean Jesus acting like a whirling dervish. It means that history is going to show God in a completely different fashion toward these people. At least that's my impression of this sort of metaphorical idea of God howling like a jackal and moaning like an owl, for her wound is incurable. That's how upset in this physical sense, God is. It's the cause of this weeping, wailing, going about barefoot and naked. The utter, it's like what did Amos said in the beginning too, that mourn like one who loses an only son. That where you don't even notice your nakedness in that. You're so overwhelmed that running around naked and barefoot is the least of your worries, though that would be the height of insanity if you were in your right mind. But when you're that far out of your mind for some sort of mourning, nothing is of any consequence. That's what I'm picturing here, that sort of lamentability.
I'm finding it interesting that he has separated very clearly the house of Judah and the house of Israel.
Right, well, they always have been since.
I understand, but here Micah has clearly separated them, and here we are in a time when they are clearly separated, and we've been identifying those people over the last couple of weeks who are the house of Israel now.
Well, if we're correct in identifying them the way the British Israelites did, which seems to be no other, there's no other way that prophecies could be fulfilled.
That's right.
Unless we are the house of Israel, or they are that. And there's a very interesting part of Micah here that I read, I want to come to, that I think that's what it talks to. We'll examine it here in a moment. So yeah, he's going to weep and wail, moan like an owl, for your wound is incurable. It has come to Judah. So whose wound? This is the wound now of I'll make Samaria a heap of rubble. Mm-hmm. This is the northern tribes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he's talking about all. Samaria is the one, and because he's going to have to do this to Samaria, because of the northern tribes, Israel's become so absurd. And that incurable wound has come to Judah. It has reached to the very gate of my people, even to Jerusalem itself. Tell it not in Gath, weep not at all in Beth Ophrah. Roll in the dust, pass on in nakedness and shame. You who live in Shaphir, those who live in Zanan, will not come out. Beth Azel is in mourning; its protection is taken from you. See, now this all could be right back into the days that are coming, because this is going to happen to them as well. Or this may also be one of those things like the prophecy of Jonah and Christ's first coming that plays out in a cyclical way. I don't know the history of their time enough to know if this is what happened then. Those who live in Marath writhe in pain, waiting for relief because disaster has come from the Lord, even to the gate of Jerusalem. You who live in Lachish, harness the team to the chariot. You were the beginning of sin to the daughter of Zion, for the transgression of Israel were found in you. Yeah, I guess even to the gate of Israel, because of course Israel does get destroyed. They get into exile and don't come back for 70 years to start.
Well, see, that Samaria was the capital of the northern kingdom. This is after God had separated the kingdom, into the 10 tribes of the north and the 3 tribes that were the rulers and the lawmakers and so on. So now what he's saying to me here is that he's going to destroy that northern tribe in their territory. And that northern tribe, all of the British Israelites, is the ones that came to Western Europe and their offspring to the United States through England and so on and so forth. So what we're looking at here is that house of Israel and their capital and the people of the house of Israel, not the Jews. The Jews now are separated out in that prophecy, because here comes their sin to the doorstep of Jerusalem itself now, you see. And that could mean this little horn king has now turned to Antichrist and takes over that temple or whatever is constructed there for them to have their sacrifice. So looking at it up and bringing it into today's view, I can see that describing what Isaiah saw, because this book is known as kind of like Isaiah in shorthand.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not sure. I don't know Isaiah well enough. There's so much in Isaiah, and Micah seems to be focused here on this. I'm just realizing here as you go through the second and third chapter, it would seem that he's, even if, like we pointed out in Revelation, he's speaking to the future progression in a pattern that's already in the meaning. Mm-hmm. In other words, what I'm always trying to say, the greedy are the ones that are in trouble. If you love money, that's the real hard one to kick. It's the people that
serve two masters.
That's it. You can't serve two masters, and it's always the ones. And we're going to read more of it. Boy, it's the people that are charging after the money and the power in neglect of the humility of being one with everybody, letting God provide for you instead of that comfort of having all the comfort in the world in having the money. And this is what always is the nature of the sin that God hates. And so that's why I say it could in fact be in the way of something that can be shown as a pattern that happens through all time. But it certainly is happening to these people at the time that Micah's prophesying. He's telling them now that this disaster is coming from the Lord, even to the gate of Jerusalem. That you who live in Lachish, I don't know where that is, but he's saying you were the beginning of sin to the daughter of Zion, which is Jerusalem, which means these are the sons of Israel that are bearing this weight at this time. I've read that at this time the northern tribes had gotten sort of to the height of their power, their secular power in the world before they were taken captive. So this is when they've fallen farthest from God now, all the way from Samuel and through the old prophets that were trying to keep them doing the right thing or to be taken into bondage. They're about to go into bondage now to Assyria, because they've reached the height of their power, which is now influencing Jerusalem. That's the way I'm starting to see it. Again, if you speculate that out to the end days, it's like the same position. They've returned to that position where they're the Assyrian again, or they are wedded to the secular world of the Assyrian, that world of worshiping, I suppose, military might and whatever false gods gave the Assyrians their power.
It's just so relevant what he says when you're living in today's world, that if you happen to have the awareness that we have because of all of the study that we've done in the years that we've taken to watch this happen.
So anyway, he tells them, verse 15, I'll bring a conqueror against you who live in Mareshah. He who is the glory of Israel will come to Adullam. Shave your heads in mourning for the children in whom you delight. Make yourselves as bald as the vulture, for they will go from you into exile. The children that you delight in are going into exile. Woe to those who plan iniquity, chapter 2 starts. And again, here's what I want to get at. He's talking to those people, obviously, but is this not a message for all time, just like in Romans? Woe to those who plan iniquity, to those who plot evil on their beds. At morning's light they carry it out because it is in their power to do it. Now here's the iniquity that they plot at night. They covet fields and seize them. This is land. God, I got to buy that property. I can get it for a steal. And houses and take them. Oh, those poor people, they'll never be able to match our bid. They defraud a man of his home, a fellow man of his inheritance. Okay, these are the people that plot evil at night. These aren't the warlords. Let's go kill millions. I mean, you'd think this would be no, these are the mighty men that don't have the humility, that murder thinking their murder makes them strong and God brings them down by the sword. But I find it uncanny in the Bible that when he talks about the wrong sort of person, the wrong sort of sin, the real apex of it all for humans, it comes down to this love of money, boy. Woe to those who plan iniquity, to those who plot evil on their beds. At morning's light they carry it out, because it is in their power to do it. You know, at night I'm thinking, let's see, how do I get that land? Shoot, I'll just, whatever. If you're Monsanto, maybe it means, well, I'll just have it rain on that land for 3 years till it's washed up and worthless, and then I'll buy it for pennies on the dollar. I don't know, but this is, you know, I'm not talking about every poor person who's trying to make a living. I'm saying that it's due to our craving for money that we wind up in this deepest sin. Because we got power to do it. They covet fields and seize them, and houses and take them. They defraud a man of his home, a fellow man of his inheritance. Therefore the Lord says, I am planning disaster against this people, from which you cannot save yourselves. And now you know, I think what you're saying today, Dad, is what's becoming to me the vision, that this has got to be talking about us in the house of Israel. All those greedy buggers who became the bankers, who became this modern Babylonian economic system, who are going to blow up in one day. Okay, watch how Micah gets to this vision of standing afar off with this terror of how could this happen. I see like Micah's getting it from a different angle on this house of Israel. So let's see if we can get there today. I'm planning a disaster against this people, for which you cannot save yourselves. You will no longer walk proudly, for it will be a time of calamity. In that day, this day of time of calamity, men will ridicule you. They will taunt you with this mournful song. We are utterly ruined. My people's possession is divided up. He takes it from me. He assigns our fields to traders. Therefore, you will have no one in the assembly of the Lord to divide the land by lot. Do not prophesy, their prophets say. Do not prophesy about these things. Disgrace will not overtake us. Should it be said, O house of Jacob, is the Spirit of the Lord angry? Does he do such things? Do not my words do good to him whose ways are upright? Lately my people have risen up like an enemy. You strip off the rich robe from those who pass by without care. Look again what they do. Right? First they tell the prophets, don't say that. What do you mean? Disgrace will not overtake us. Should it be said, the house of Israel, should it be said of the house of Jacob, is the Spirit of the Lord angry? Does he do such things? Do not my words do good to him whose ways are upright? Lately my people have risen up like an enemy. So this is the difference between the people whose ways are upright and the way that he sees them. You strip off the rich robe from those who pass by without a care, like men returning from battle. You drive the women of my people from their pleasant homes. You take away my blessing from their children forever. Get up, go away. This is not your resting place, because it is defiled. It is ruined beyond all remedy. If a liar and deceiver comes and says, I will prophesy for you plenty of wine and beer, he would be just the prophet for this people. Now, you know, I was blogging 6 or 8 years ago now, 6, 7 years ago, about, we had that guru in the Christian church, Kim or something, somebody Kim, who was filling stadiums with people, telling them how Christians were just going to, you know, showing them all the blessings and how not to be so down. Things aren't bad, things are good, things are very good, and they're getting better. They're getting better than ever, and nobody should talk about how things are bad, right? And this is before all of this, you know, where we're at today. And I was saying, well, yeah, but that's not what the Bible says about, you know, it's going to get bad at the end. There's punishment coming, and the Laodiceans are all into their riches, and they're not feeding people. And what are we talking about? You know, what kind of message is this for the Christian church? Get up and cheer how good everything is. The message of the church is the apostle. Nobody claimed anything for themselves, and there were no needy among them, and people were happy to be persecuted for the name of the Lord, pick up their cross and follow Him in that way. So anyway, I find this very interesting. This about if a liar and deceiver comes, and this is all the way back then. 2,700 years ago, same position we're all in. If a liar and deceiver comes and says, I will prophesy for you plenty of wine and beer, he would be just the prophet for this people. I will surely gather all of you, O Jacob. I will surely bring together the remnant of Israel. I will bring them together like sheep in a pen, like a flock in its pasture. The place will throng with people. One who breaks open the way will go up before them. They will break through the gate and go out. Their king will pass through before them, the Lord at their head. See how all of a sudden we move right into that time again when he's gathered them into a pen, so many of them, and they will go out. What does it say? One who breaks open the way will go up before them. I wonder who that could be. Christians. Their king will pass through, and they will break through the gate and go out. Then I said, listen, you leaders of Jacob, you rulers of the house of Israel, should you not know justice, you who hate good and love evil, who tear the skin from my people and the flesh from their bones, who eat my people's flesh, strip off their skin and break their bones in pieces, who chop them up like meat for the pen, like flesh for the pot. I mean, remember what he's just said, who we're talking about, the land grabbers, those that buy the poor for silver and the needy for a pair of sandals. Then they will cry out to the Lord. Now, this isn't the people whose flesh have been broken now. This is the people who's doing it. The house of Israel, should you not know justice? You chop them up like meat for the pan, like flesh for the pot. Who eat my people's flesh? Then they will cry out to the Lord, but he will not answer them. At that time, he will hide his face from them because of the evil they have done. This is what the Lord says. As for the prophets who lead my people astray, if one feeds them, they proclaim peace. If he does not, they prepare to wage war against him. Right? Same thing today. I keep telling the Christians, you got to stop patting yourself on the back for the message and start being a Christian in the world. It's tough. Give away at least half your stuff, or, if you can, give away all of it if you want to be perfect. But start at least looking at that as the goal, not this, I'm so great because I'm a Christian and he's going to kill everybody else and just save me. That's really not the love that God's looking for. That's not helping the poor and the widows and orphans and providing for the needy, which is what we're commanded literally to do. So yeah, he says, but if the prophets come to you saying peace, they'll feed them, but if not, they prepare to wage war against them. That's how. Therefore, night will come over you without visions. This is what he's saying to the prophets. As for the prophets who lead my people astray, if one feeds them, they proclaim peace. If he does not, they proclaim to wage war against them. Therefore, night will come over you, the people, without visions, and darkness without divination. The sun will set for the prophets, and the day will go dark for them. The seers will be ashamed, and the diviners disgraced. They will all cover their faces, because there is no answer from God. But as for me, I am filled with power, with the Spirit of the Lord, and with justice and might, to declare to Jacob his transgression, to Israel his sin. So then he goes, now this is the last part where he, in this moment, is still talking specifically to them, or more specifically to them, with implications of the future, but he's still laying it out in the beginning of his monologue here to these people and what's upsetting the Lord. They're stealing. They're at the height of their financial capacity. And they've got prophets that they only honor if they tell them everything's going to be fine. Don't prophesy doom. Don't tell us we're going into exile. God's not going to do that to us. Look, we're the house of Israel and we're on top of our game. Again, does that sound like the Laodicean church? We're rich and have need of nothing? What do you mean we're poor and naked and miserable?
And it also fits the people who are that house of Israel on that financial.
They are the Christians. They're the Christians. They're the Christian church.
Some of them were Jews who are not Jews. They just claim to be.
Yeah, I think that's Jews. I think that's Judah over there. Those are the ones that claim to be Jews that are dying to split the mountain. Get what with the New Moon Festival? Let's sell the wheat.
Yeah,
those are Jews that claim to be Jews but are not. No, the house of Israel is the ones who, in the place that they've been scattered and become not known as my people. That means they're not Jews. They don't call themselves Jews. They become known as sons of the living God. I don't know who you call that, but I'd call them Christians.
Yeah.
So hear this, you leaders of the house of Jacob, you rulers of the house of Israel who despise justice and distort all that is right, who build Zion with bloodshed and Jerusalem with wickedness. Her leaders judge for a bribe, her priests teach for a price, and her prophets tell fortunes for money. Yet they lean upon the Lord and say, is not the Lord among us? No disaster will come upon us. Therefore, because of you, Zion will be plowed like a field. Jerusalem will become a heap of rubble. The temple, a hill. The temple hill, a mound overgrown with thickets. So see, that's a prophecy that happened already. That was for them, and it happened when they got conquered and taken to Babylon. But now the next words say, in the last days.
Mm-hmm. After that.
Well, that's why the Ryrie Study Bible is just, these poor guys, I don't know, maybe they wrote it long enough ago they didn't have the new knowledge. So I'm not judging them, but I wouldn't encourage people to get used to their commentary, because they can't seem to separate what seems to us now, because of being in these days and through the rest of the prophecy, so much more obvious that even if it did apply to days past, it certainly doesn't apply completely, because the last days always wind up, the thought ends in this millennial kingdom. So watch. Chapter 4. He just finishes by saying, but as for me, he says, okay, you prophets that are saying God would never do that to us, everything's going to be fine. And he's saying darkness you're going to be ashamed, right? Because you're not going to get no word, but all these good words, obviously, you're going to be ashamed, and the diviners disgrace, they'll all cover their faces, because there's no answer from God instead. Okay, but as for me, I'm filled with power, Spirit of the Lord, with justice and might, to declare to Jacob his transgression and to Israel his sin. And then he starts, hear this, you leaders of the house of Jacob, you rulers of the house of Israel. So now he's going to tell them their transgression, and he tells them, because you've been dishonest, you build it with bloodshed and injustice, everybody's in it for the money, right? The judges judge for a bribe, the priests teach for a price, and the prophets tell fortunes for money. Money, money, money. He doesn't say one thing there about the priests teach for power, the leaders want, no, bribe, price, money. So, I don't know. Am I wrong to say that money is the thing that's going to stand between you and God? So, anyway, and then because of that, therefore, because of you, because they say, is the Lord not among us? No disaster will come among us, even though they're cheating their own people and eating their flesh through their cheating, stealing their land, creating widows and orphans, and saying, yeah, but the Lord's with us. Nothing can happen to us. And so because of you, Zion will be plowed like a field. Jerusalem will become a heap of rubble. The temple hill, a mound overgrown with thickets. And that happened 600 years before Christ. They went into bondage. In the last days, the mountain of the Lord's temple will be established as chief among the mountains. Now, relate that to Revelation. There are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Okay, mountains. These are kingdoms. These are I mean, that's what it is. In the last days, the kingdom of the Lord's temple will be established as chief among the kingdoms. It will be raised above the hills, and peoples will stream to it. Many nations will come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways, so that we may walk in his paths. The law will go out from Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." Okay, see, this all hasn't happened yet. It goes, this is what I guess the bigger message that I want to share with people. So when you're reading the Old Testament prophets, you might really be able to distinguish how simply they transition from the moment to the moment that has not yet come. And, he just gets through telling them that the temple's going to be destroyed, heap of rubble. And it did. The temple got destroyed, and Jerusalem became a heap of rubble 2,600 years ago. It's been rebuilt. But we haven't, but not, chapter 4 hasn't happened yet. And yet after chapter 4, you're going to see he goes back to talking to the people at the time. So see, not everything is chronological, the way they lay this out, because it's coming through God's vision of it, which is all time at once. So that when he speaks of what you're doing now and how I'm going to punish you, he relates that all the way to the end game punishment or anything in between. So in the last days, in that time when the mountain of the Lord's temple, the kingdom of the Lord, will be established and raised above all else, and all nations are going to come to it to hear the word. It says now, verse 3 in this 4th chapter of Micah, he will judge between many peoples and will settle disputes for strong nations far and wide. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. Think we've reached that ever in history yet? Are we there yet?
No.
So chapter 4 is this picture of the millennial kingdom, I would say, or even after the millennial kingdom. Every man will sit under his own vine and under his own fig tree, and no one will make them afraid, for the Lord Almighty has spoken. All the nations may walk in the name of their gods. Okay, Christians, so stop sending people to hell. All the nations may walk in the name of their gods. We will walk in the name of the Lord our God forever and ever. In that day, declares the Lord. When? Same time we're talking about. We haven't gotten there. I will gather the lame. I will assemble the exiles and those I have brought to grief. I will make, who are these? The exiles and those he's brought to grief. Right? Aren't these the Jews that missed it? The valley of dry bones, maybe, of Ezekiel. I will assemble the exiles and those I have brought to grief. I will make the lame a remnant, those driven away a strong nation. The Lord will rule over them in Mount Zion from that day and forever. As for you, O watchtower of the flock, O stronghold of the daughter of Zion, the former dominion will be restored to you. Kingship will come to the daughter of Jerusalem. Now watch the next sentence. This is all within the 4th chapter. Obviously, this is still in that day, which started back in the 4th chapter, in the last days, which started right after the temple will be destroyed and the hill overgrown with thickets, which is 2,600 years ago. Now in the last days, though, he's going to have his kingdom. It's going to be the chief among kingdoms, because he just told them it's all going to be destroyed. You're going to shave your heads like vultures for the children you love, because they're going into exile. You Samaria, who thinks you're so great, you northern tribes who are so strong, you should be mourning right now. God's judged you. Your children are going into exile. And because of the way you've done business, and say, well, but what's going to happen to us? The Lord's with us. He's going to overturn this place and destroy the temple. And then he assures them, in the last days, though, his kingdom's going to be the biggest one of all, and all the kingdoms are going to come, and he's going to judge from here between the nations, and all the other people can follow their gods, but we'll be with our God. See, it's because at that time, what God was against is they were following the other nations' gods. And he's saying, yeah, the other people may follow their gods, but we'll follow our God. And that's going to result in the gathering of the lame and the exiles, and they're going to be a great nation, and their God will rule over them day and night forever, and kingship will be restored to Jerusalem. So we know that that's this future. That's either in the millennial kingdom or after the millennial kingdom for the thousands of years that follow. I'm not sure, because of that, beat the swords into plowshares. That can't happen if there's any war to fight, any fighting going on during the millennial kingdom, which I'm not so sure there can't be, because they're going to rule with a sword. So anyhow, whichever way, we know that this is talking about some end game position when the Lord's ruling over them forever. And then from verse 8, as for you, O watchtower of the flock, stronghold of the daughter of Zion, the former dominion will be restored to you. The kingship will come to the daughter of Jerusalem. And then he goes right into the 9th verse. Why do you cry? Why do you now cry aloud? Have you no king? Has your counselor perished, that pain seizes you, like that of a woman in labor? He's returning to the moment that they're about to face all of a sudden. He went from the temple's going to be destroyed and the hill turned into a bunch of brush, but God's kingdom is going to be there eventually and forever. Why do you now cry aloud? Have you no king, that your counselor perished? Has your counselor perished, that pain seizes you like that of a woman in labor? Writhe in agony, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in labor, for now you must leave the city to camp in the open field. You will go to Babylon. See, again, we're back to the present. We're back to 2,600 years ago from in the middle of the chapter here. We return through the word now. Why do you now cry aloud? Okay, writhe in agony like a woman in labor, for you're going to leave the city, camp in an open field. You'll go to Babylon. There you will be rescued. There the Lord will redeem you out of the hand of your enemies. But now many nations are gathered against you. They say, let her be defiled. Let our eyes gloat over Zion. But they do not know the thoughts of the Lord. They do not understand his plan. He who gathers them like sheaves to the threshing floor. Rise and thresh, O daughter of Zion, for I will give you horns of iron. I will give you hooves of bronze, and you will break to pieces many nations. You will devote their ill-gotten gains to the Lord, their wealth to the Lord, their wealth to the Lord of all the earth. Isn't that interesting again? He went right back to them in their time and told them that what's going on at the moment. But now, after saying, but now you're going to go into Babylon, but you'll be rescued. The Lord will redeem you out of the hand of your enemies. But now many nations are gathered against you and say, let her be defiled. But they don't know the thoughts of the Lord or understand his plan. He who gathers them like sheaves to the threshing floor. And then the next verse, 13, rise and thresh, O daughter of Zion. I mean, this is a whole change of scene, isn't it? They're about to go into Babylon, but now many nations are gathered against you, and they say, let her be defiled. But they don't know the thoughts of the Lord or understand his plan. See, but the plan isn't immediately rise and thresh. You're not going to rise and thresh, O daughter of Zion. The threshing they're going to do is at this end that he just told them, when they're going to come out on top, right? Do you see the seesaw manner here, in which we went from the temple, the vision of what's going to happen? The temple's going to be destroyed, and Jerusalem's going to become a bunch of nothing. But then in the last days, his empire is going to be the greatest, and everybody's going to come, and his people will walk under him, and they'll be gathered into his pen. So why do you now cry? We switch back to the moment. Because you're like a woman in labor, and you're about to be driven into the open field. You're going into Babylon. There you will be rescued. There you will be rescued. There the Lord will redeem you out of the hands of your enemies. But now many nations are gathered against you. They're ready to kill you, but they don't know that the Lord's the one that gathers them. So then, 13th verse, rise and thresh, O daughter of Zion, for I will give you horns of iron, I will give you hooves of bronze, and you will break to pieces many nations. Okay, well that hasn't happened yet. It didn't happen after they got sent into Babylon. Marshal your troops, O city of troops, for a siege is laid against us. They will strike Israel's ruler on the cheek with a rod. This now to me has implications for both at that time. It's back to the moment. Marshal your troops, for a siege is laid against us. They will break Israel's ruler on the cheek with a rod. They're coming. I promise you. They are coming. And that did happen. But the part before that about rise and thresh is like a parenthesis. What are they? The whole thought there in this second half of the 4th chapter, when he returns to why do you now cry aloud, but now many nations are gathered, is that you're going into Babylon, but there you will be redeemed. But of course, that's not for 70 years. Mm-hmm. And then, because the promise of redemption is coming, here's the further instruction that's going to happen for you. Rise and thresh, for I will give you horns of iron. I will give you. So you're going to be made strong. Horns of iron, hooves of bronze. To them that meant indestructible power. Horns of iron don't break, and hooves of bronze don't wear out from stomping everything that's softer. And you will break to pieces many nations. Okay, see, that's an assurance, just like before the parenthesis of the assurance after Jerusalem was that God's empire is going to be there eventually. But then he goes back to the people of that day, but now you got to go into Babylon where you'll be rescued, because now you got all the nations around you and they're ready to defile you. They don't understand that God's going to have his way with you, because you're going to get horns of iron and hooves of bronze, and you're going to stamp many nations. But marshal your troops, because there's a siege coming against us, and they're going to strike our ruler on the cheek. So it's like he's in this 4th chapter, he flows in and out of their moment relating to the end, because the end is the assurance that this moment won't be the end. Mm-hmm. Right? That God's already, he's not forsaking the promises he made. He's just putting these constant parentheses that are meant to drive them back to his way by saying that, okay, you think you're strong, but you're about to lose everything. You should shave your head because your children are going into exile, right? But you're going to rule everybody. So what are you crying about? Why not just do what's right? And then right as this 5th chapter starts with marshal your troops, for a siege is laid against us, they will strike Israel's ruler on the cheek with a rod, which again seems to go right back to where we are now 2,700 years ago. But you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from old, from ancient times. Okay, now I think we all know that's Christ. And so here's this prophecy about the coming of the ruler out of Bethlehem. Therefore Israel will be abandoned until the time when she who is in labor gives birth, and the rest of his brothers return to join the Israelites. Now this points to another jump into our time. Therefore Israel will be abandoned until the time when she who is in labor, which is Judah. Now, this labor he's talking about that's going to come on them in the final days. Daniel, and the labor pains, and they will not be able to escape.
Paul, they shall not escape.
Yeah, but Daniel first said that it shall come on like labor pains that travaileth. And therefore Israel will be abandoned until the time. Now Israel be abandoned, remember, is us. They get scattered and turn to, they haven't become the Christians yet. They haven't been abandoned yet. They're nowhere else yet. They're still in that land as Samaria to the north, with Judah to the south, where they were separated and given their land. But neither of them followed the laws of the Lord, and they're about to face these going back into bondage after having come out from Egypt and spent all these hundreds of years now, having been given the land and the other nations being afraid of them, and them ruling the land and becoming like other nations and not following God's laws. And now he's about to take it all from them at this time in history. And now there's prophecy about the one that's going to come out of Bethlehem, that's going to be the ruler whose origins are from ancient times. Therefore Israel will be abandoned until the time when she who is in labor. So he's given this prophecy from way back then, that there is going to come a ruler out of Judah that will rule all Israel. But until then, Israel will be abandoned until the time when this labor that gives birth and the rest of his brothers return to join the Israelites. He will stand and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord, who, this one out of Bethlehem, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God, and they will live securely, for then his greatness will reach to the ends of the earth, and he will be their peace. Now, again, we know this is at least in the millennial kingdom. It can't be before, but now the next verse, when the Assyrian invades our land. So, whoops, we've gone backward again. And where have we gone? All the way to 2,600 years ago? I don't think so. I think here we are looking at today's world. So this I guess we'll leave Micah here. When the Assyrian invades our land and marches through our fortresses, we will raise against him 7 shepherds, even 8 leaders of men. They will rule the land of Assyria with the sword, the land of Nimrod with drawn sword. He will deliver us from the Assyrian when he invades our land and marches into our borders. The remnant of Jacob will be in the midst of many peoples like dew from the Lord, like showers on the grass which do not wait for man or linger for mankind. The remnant of Jacob will be among the nations, in the midst of many peoples, like a lion among the beasts of the forest, like a young lion among flocks of sheep, which mauls and mangles as it goes, and no one can rescue. Your hand will be lifted up in triumph over your enemies, and all your foes will be destroyed. In that day, see, that's how we know where we're at now again. He goes back to, in that day, I will destroy your horses from among you and demolish your chariots. I will destroy the cities of your land and tear down all your strongholds. I will destroy your witchcraft, and you will no longer cast spells. I will destroy your carved images and your sacred stones from among you. You will no longer bow down to the work of your hands. I will uproot from among you your Asherah poles and demolish your cities. I will take vengeance in anger and wrath upon the nations that have not obeyed me. I'd like to finish today, but we don't have time. So there's so much now in the last of this, the last of Micah, about the judgments and what's going to happen. So, and then how it ends. So I guess we'll leave it at that. But I find, for anyone who wants to study it, the 5th chapter, it's very interesting too. The 4th chapter brings us in and out through time, from his vision of the time that's going on, the captivity that's coming, projecting this security or this prophecy of restoration into the future, and then back to the moment. But now the kings are against you, and but they don't know that God's really gathering them, because you're going to get, you daughter of Zion, will be given horns of iron, hooves of bronze, and you'll trample many nations, and you will devote their ill-gotten gains to the Lord, their wealth to the Lord of all the earth. So we know that's at the end, because what they're being punished for all along is for stealing all the wealth for themselves. So this is, again, this prophecy about, but then it's back to the moment in 5, marshal your troops, for a siege is laid against us. So this is not after they're devoting all the ill-gotten gains to the Lord, after they've broken the nations to pieces. This is now back to the moment 2,600 years ago, and then the prophecy, but you, Bethlehem, are going to have a ruler come out of you, and he's going to he's going to stand and shepherd his flocks, and be their peace in the days that the Assyrian invades their land and marches through their fortresses. Mm-hmm. See, because this is the part that I want to end with, that we started with this idea of the house of Israel being in part the Christian church. The remnant of Jacob will be in the midst of many peoples like dew from the Lord. Like dew, it's just everywhere, right? The remnant of Jacob will be among the nations, in the midst of many peoples, like a lion among the beasts of the forest. So they'll not only be among them, but in strength. Which is to say, these Catholic nations, these Christian nations that, even though are philosophically completely atheistic now, are still, all have God in their constitutions, all have churches littering their world, all have priesthoods and monotheistic, religious festivals. They're all known as sons of the living God, even in their current atheism. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not exactly sure, but I'm not sure who else could fit this prophecy that seems to keep putting them in this despair, but then from the remnant in the midst of all the people, when the Assyrian invades their land, we will raise against him. We will raise against him 7 shepherds, even 8 leaders of men. So anyway, this is something to get into next week. We'll cut it off here, but thanks, Dad, for being here.
Oh, I really enjoyed it. It's getting very exciting, and I hope you folks find it that way. Drop us a line, let us know. BroSal.org.
Yeah, thanks. Go to BroSal.org for any of the comments and questions. If you know what's going on with these star signs, as some of our friends do, let us know, because I find that a very interesting watch as well. So until next week, just remember the people who really have anything to worry about the power of God are the ones that aren't giving in their hearts, that are taking and looking after money instead of looking after that feeling that even if you lost everything that you call security tomorrow, it would be perhaps to only find the real security, which is God. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's the aesthetic notion in religion that the monks embody for everyone. They live with nothing, or as little as possible, to demonstrate the idea that the more you live away from the comfort of the world, the more you find the comfort of God and the Spirit. And so, but as Paul pointed out with the speaking in tongues, he says, I'd rather say one intelligible word that helps somebody than 1,000,000 words in tongues that only help me. And I feel that way with the aesthetic idea. It might be good if it's what you need to break some sort of commitment to that physical nature, but in the realm of following Christ, I imagine that he would rather have someone who can't stop drinking but is always feeding people who are hungry, mm-hmm. than he would someone who aesthetically lives a life of pure spiritual connection, or as pure as possible through some constant state of aesthetic, denial. So I think that the real Christian journey is that one. We need to find a way to help love our neighbor and share what we have with everyone, take care of those that are in need. So I just want to encourage people that whenever you have an opportunity to feed somebody or help somebody, you should definitely do it.
And always do it with frankincense.
That's
hilariously joyful that you're doing it because you know why you're doing it.
That's right. Well, otherwise it's not even really giving, and it's just deepens the frustration. So until next week, thanks for being here. God bless everybody.